If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to MindShock True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to the Delphi Case series. And this is episode 15, Weaving a Tangled Web. And there's a lot of problems with this case. Very obvious problems, and then not so obvious problems that delve into statewide corruption. Now, coincidence theorists, corruption, conspiracy deniers that pretend that all government officials are always on the up and up and perfectly competent, they're going to find this episode extremely controversial. To critical thinkers, it might be a little bit more interesting, examining fallible humans and fallible behavior and various degrees of competency. So we'll be finally taking a look at the Flora Fire and the issues with some of these individuals that intersect the Delphi case, like Doug Carter. And he's not the only one. There's quite a few others. As always, if you find the podcast interesting, you can support the channel and donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. Or you could just go to youtube.com/MindShock or youtube.com/MindShock True Crime. Like and share this podcast to keep awareness up. In this case, awareness is how cases get solved. People keep talking, someone mentions something, and a new lead can manifest. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. All I ask is that at least a very, very basic children's level of English comprehension be met in order to have fruitful discussion, because people that are not even understanding what is being presented, getting triggered. Obviously, I do not discuss any individuals that aren't already public. I don't discuss any theories that aren't already public, especially in the case of public officials. I mean, this isn't rocket science, people. Okay, so let's just do the quick background on the Flora Fire, a very, very tragic case. This article is from wishtv.com. Justice for the girls. 3 years later, no arrests after Flora girls die in fire. And this was published February 12th, 2020, so last year. Over a year ago. More than 3 years, and the article is by Stephanie Zeppelin, Travis Robinson, and Richard Essex. More than 3 years ago, a mom lost all her daughters. A house fire that gutted the home also resulted in the death of 4 girls ages 5 to 11. The mom survived, and the search for answers continues. If you drove past the corner house at Columbia and Division Streets before November 21st, 2016, you'd probably see 4 little faces smiling back. They were so joyous, said Kathy Clendening, one of the women who helped create a cookbook to raise funds for the family after the fire. They were very happy girls. I never seen them not smiling. Always on the front porch waving at everybody that went by. They didn't know a stranger. Now the house is the site of a mystery. Keone, Kariel, Kayara, and Kayana died in a fire in this house. Immediately after, the state fire marshal's office said it did not suspect foul play. But about 2 months later, a stunning announcement via email. Investigators now labeled the case arson. The girl's mom was the only survivor. For me to be right here today, it is just so hard. It's so hard, said Tracy Rose, the victim's grandfather. But as I continue to teach my daughter, you gotta keep fighting. Fight they did. The community created a cookbook and raised money, hoping it would draw out someone who knew something. People in Flora held a vigil marking 1 year since the fire, but that night, The state police did not release a suspect or description. As long as I'm breathing air, we're going to stay here, said ISP Superintendent Doug Carter on the 1-year anniversary of the fire. So we'll continue to move forward. We'll continue to drive and to drive and to talk and to talk and to talk. That month, Carroll County Prosecutor Rob Ives announced he would step down, and Flora Fire Chief Adam Randall resigned. Timeline of events, November 21st, 2016, Keone, Kariel, Kayara, and Kayana are killed in the fire. A day later, the fire is ruled undetermined. January 28th, 2017, the state fire marshal says the fire was intentionally set. May 25th, 2017, the fire is ruled intentional by Homeland Security and a new ISP detective takes over the case. June 23rd, 2017, the Carroll County prosecutor asked investigators not to release info. June 26, 2017, a fire investigator with the Indiana State Fire Marshal's Office resigns after questions about investigations arise. August 26, 2017, a new reward poster is released. November 11, 2017, Carroll County Prosecutor Rob Ives announces he's stepping down. January 1st, 2018, new prosecutor Nicholas McLeland takes the post. January 8th, 2018, Todd Trent is named the new fire chief in Flora. So a lot of these officials resigning looks quite suspicious. I mean, we're going to come back to that and examine that as well. What happened remains a secret. The biggest mystery in Flora lies inside the corner house. State investigators said the fire that killed the girls was arson, but what exactly happened is shrouded in secrecy. A man named Mike Vergan is one of the people who has been inside the house since the fire. He runs his own fire investigation company. He was hired by the mom of the 4 girls and her attorney. He has not worked with them for months, but said he still thinks about the house and the case often. Vergan spent more than 15 years as a certified fire investigator with the ATF before starting his own company. He has been to more than 1,000 fire scenes and investigated this one just weeks after it happened. There are still things he does not want to share. Here's an exchange from an interview with Vergan and I-Team 8's Stephanie Zeppelin. Vergan, where I thought the fire started is where it started. Zeppelin says, and that is where. Vergan responds, I can't really say right now because, and I'll tell you why. If we get to a point in the investigation that they make an arrest, the only people that should know where the fire started is the person who set it and the investigators. Vergan told I-Team 8 he believes the fire was an arson, but that the goal was not to kill the children. He is also not sure whether everything possible is being done to solve the case. I don't think it'd hurt to call all the agencies in, said Vergan. It never hurts to have a fresh set of eyes looking at something and share all of the information, not just some of the information. The case has already been reviewed by Indiana State Police, the State Fire Marshal, and the Indianapolis Fire Department. However, Vergan thinks more fresh eyes will be needed for the case to be solved. He also wants the family to know people still care. I just hope someday there's an answer, Vergan said. Vergan says working smoke alarms may be the only thing that could have saved the girls. The girls' mother has filed a federal wrongful death lawsuit against their landlord, claiming there were no working smoke detectors. I-Team 8 reached out to the mother for an interview, but she declined based on the advice of her attorney. Community looks back on tragic fire. The Florida community is finding new ways to keep their people safe as they look back to the tragic loss of the 4 girls. Community members say the girls barely get brought up these days outside the anniversary of the fire. But just like the house, thoughts of the girls and who may have set the fire are still there today. The town came together after the loss of the sisters. Every year they still gather to place flowers on the home's porch in remembrance. It was a shock to the town, Joyce Simpson said. These 4 little girls would always step outside and wave to you when you were going by. They were on a cheerleading squad, they were beautiful little girls, and I can't imagine somebody doing this to them. Many people rallied around fundraisers like Flora's 4 Angels cookbooks. We've raised $20,000, Simpson said. That money is supposed to get anyone who can help lead to an arrest. It will get to the town if no answers come by 2025. The family has moved away, the fundraising has died down, and hope is fading that answers will ever come. As long as it's been, I don't think anybody will come forward, Simpson said. I'm hoping there is, but I don't think. I think it's too late. But that doesn't mean what happened to the girls has been forgotten. As the investigation continues, the house still stands on the town's main street, boarded up and charred, serving as a daily reminder of tragedy. You'd be very hard-pressed to find one person in the town of Flora that doesn't want to figure out what happened to the girls, Carroll County Councilman Ethan Brown said. That's for sure. Everybody still is working to try to solve this mystery and all that and what happened, and I think we'll get there. Brown runs a restaurant down the street from the home. He says ever since the Flora arson and the double homicides of teen girls in neighboring Delphi, the town has been working hard to ensure yet another tragedy doesn't happen this close to home. This stuff never happens here, Brown says. To have it happen back to back with the Delphi murders is just horrible. Community members say if you know anything, please come forward and bring these girls justice. Okay. Where the investigation stands. If you'd like to contribute to the Flora's Four Angels Cookbook Fund, you can purchase one from Joyce Simpson by calling her at 574-967-4858. Where the investigation stands. Indiana State Police is leading the investigation. I-Team 8's Richard Essex recently sat down with ISP Superintendent Doug Carter. Carter says the detectives have not completely cleared anyone in the case and that they are still following tips and re-examining evidence. Flora has been very personal matter to me. There are many people that probably don't believe that's the case. I have a rock over there. I see those 4 little girls' names every day. I believe that case is solvable, but we got to be able to talk to everybody involved, said Carter. Carter would not talk to News 8 about any specific evidence that has been collected. Man, Carter's not having a good track record here in these past few years here. So, yeah, this is quite tragic. And Flora is roughly 10 miles southeast, mostly east, a little bit southeast of Delphi. The Indiana Packers Corporation is roughly a quarter of the way from Delphi to Flora. So let me go through one more article here. Pharos Tribune, Logansport, Indiana. Flora grieves loss of young girls. Local businesses have donation cans for the family. This was published November 21st, 2016 by Ben Middlecamp. Friends of a mother and her family torn with tragedy Monday morning began to memorialize a Flora home just hours after the 4 girls inside died in a fire, dropping off balloons, flowers, and dolls to remember the sisters whom the town now calls their own. The early morning blaze in downtown Flora killed 4 young sisters, authorities say, and injured their mother, as well as 2 law enforcement officers who responded to the flames. 10-year-old Audrey Weaver said she remembers her friend as someone who's funny, sweet, and always had a smile on her face. She knew all the girls, but Audrey said the oldest of the 4 was her best friend, a friend of hers since kindergarten. If she ever did something wrong, she would always say sorry, she said. She was a great friend. I'm glad she was my friend. Audrey's father, John Weaver, said they recently saw the family at the Area 4 agency, where the mother was signing her children up for a Christmas adoption program. Weaver said single parents like she and him could qualify for free presents during the holidays. I'm sure it was difficult to take care of 4 girls, he said. She's supposed to pick up her presents on December 19th. He remembers the oldest sister as an encouraging friend for Audrey. She had good aura, a nice bright shine to her, Weaver said. Jojo Plunkett sees the mother every morning before work at the Marathon gas station in town where the mother works. They would always talk as she would make breakfast at the station. Most times, Plunkett said she would talk about her 4 girls. She would talk nothing bad about her kids, she said. They meant everything to her in the world. It's so sad. Plunkett said she would also see the girls playing outside and riding their bikes when she would go eat at Pizza King, located across the street from the house. They would always say hi to everybody, she said. They were typical little girls enjoying life. Plunkett, who works at the corner cafe, said many of the businesses in town, such as the cafe, Dollar General, and Parrott's Meat Processing and Catering, have donation cans to aid in the mother's unexpected costs. Weaver added that someone also created a GoFundMe page. I'm just devastated, Plunkett said, who donated wherever she could Monday. Carroll Consolidated School Corporation released a statement Monday afternoon that grief counselors were available for students all day. Counselors and clergy members are also free to meet with anyone Tuesday and Wednesday at Carroll Elementary School. All activities other than sports practices have been canceled, the district stated in the release. Audrey, a fourth grader at Carroll Elementary, said she's heard of a memorial for the girls at some point during the week and that people are planning to bring food donations for the mother. Our school cares so much about her, she said. Plunkett said the community came together for her daughter many years ago when she was in a serious car crash, and she expects that to happen again. When one of us hurt, she said, we all hurt. So interesting comments here from one John Weaver. Now, John Weaver is not the rarest name. I'm sure there's a bunch of Weavers out there. Of course, John is one of the most popular first names in history. So how many John Weavers are in this case? I am not alleging that this is the same John Weaver that allegedly said that the bodies were found in the water in Delphi. I am not alleging this is the same John Weaver who works as a professor at Purdue University, where Kelsey German happened to go. And I am not alleging that this is the same John Weaver that also has other connections intersecting these two cases. So it's quite curious. Some people are theorizing that he should be looked at as a suspect. I am not doing that because I haven't seen direct evidence that this is the same John Weaver in all of these situations. Because if these are different John Weavers, then it's not a coincidence because it's not the same guy. But before we get into the police scanner, and we'll be listening to a cleaned up version of it to get rid of the static so we can hear clearly what's going on the police scanner audio at the time. Let's examine the Flora Fire here. Here's a post from the subreddit Libby and Abby by Human Oil. Did anyone realize that law enforcement said almost the same thing verbatim in each case? No info released, no suspects arrested, 2 detectives in each case, but Delphi has additional from ISP and FBI. I had never heard of the Flora Fire victims until this, and that breaks my heart. If anyone knows where to get more info on them, please let me know. I'm not saying there's a conspiracy, but they do the silence thing in all their cases, which would mean that's why they haven't gotten anywhere as far as arrests. I mean, it's obviously the COD and the fires, but the lack of info, they have even spoken of that case is crazy. I'm not saying throw in every card you have, but asking about suspects, people seen around the area, or anything. DC is too personally involved, or he has horrible skills as a policeman. That's 6 kids dead with no answers. If they have 2 detectives on each case, how are they doing 40 hours a week and still getting their regular jobs done? I'm kind of astounded. What do you think could be more done to help these cases? What info besides cause of death would help? Do you think that at this point it's all talk to pacify the public? Do you think either case is solvable after this long? He wants info, but the public can't say what they don't know in either case. What are we supposed to look for? The voice in Delphi case could be so distorted that they made what it sounded like it should, but in reality it's not his voice. The phrases sound different. The picture could have been Grandpa or 18-year-old little Johnny, according to them. These cases are so confused. Another post here, the NAACP has been in Carroll County asking a lot of the same questions. Dennis Randall, Indiana Department of Homeland Security fire investigator, resigned. Adam Randall, Flora Fire Chief, resigned. When CBS 4 asked Flora Fire Department officials the reason why Randall decided to step down, our crews were not given a clear answer. Also, the prosecutor stepped down. The Delphi City Police Chief stepped down. The mayor stepped down right after getting reelected. A judge stepped down. So you have all of these officials stepping down and resigning. Now, there's two ways to look at that. I mean, why would they do that? Either they're that incompetent, not capable of doing their job, and they just got upset that they're all just resigning after these cases because they can't solve them, or there's something more going on. Now, the corruption deniers will say that corruption's impossible and they would never resign to keep it. If everybody's resigning, how would this case get solved, especially if they're not bringing in even more help, like that first fire investigator said in the first article I read? I mean, you have to get more agencies involved. If you're too incompetent to solve anything, I mean, at one point, like, you're just going to keep it unsolved forever? I mean, this is how cold cases get cold. Another post here by Satana. 2.5 years after the fire, Doug Carter said they still needed to have the family talk more openly with investigators. This is Fox59.com, May 22nd, 2019. During the press conference, ISP Superintendent Doug Carter said his office really needs to sit down and speak to the whole family, as well as Rose, about the days leading up to the fire. He said they have not been invited to do so thus far. Carter said there are things about the investigation he's not able to publicly speak about, but hopes to be able to someday. It's very important that we understand who's been at that house, what the dynamics were of the people who did visit the home, and right now we don't know what those answers are, said Carter. When asked about the difference in public responses to this case and the case of 2 murdered girls in Delphi, Carter said the cases are very different. It's because we don't have access to the whole family, he said. We have to sit down and have unfettered, completely transparent conversation with everybody that had access to the home for the weeks, months, and days up to that day. When those 4 beautiful girls were killed, that's why. There will come a time when we will be able to share more with you. I wish I could share with you today what I know, but I'm not going to. He reiterated several times that ISP needs complete access to the family. They've not offered themselves to sit down with us, he said, when asked if they were not cooperating. When asked if the mother was not speaking with them, Carter said, we would love to sit down with the mother and talk to her. And this is kind of weird. So when you're doing an actual investigation, I mean, does it have to be a formal? I mean, how does that work? He's saying they're not, the mother's refusing a formal interview. I mean, I don't really follow there. Another post here. Ready definition. The Delphi City Police Chief stepped down too. Judge stepped down. He was associated with Huffer Law Firm. Mayor stepped down regarding the Flora Fire. The landlord needs looked into. So here is quite a mind-shocking post by Almagada. The Flora Fire has a better chance to be a true conspiracy in my opinion. The property was owned by people who were firefighters or retired firefighters. They were also connected to people in state and local government. The insurance company for the appliance company sent in their own investigators and determined that the fire was arson when the prior investigators found that it was an electrical short in the kitchen stove. There were no working smoke detectors in the home. If the case is determined to be arson, then no one is to blame except the arsonist, which lets the property owners and the appliance company off the hook for liability. Okay, so they're looking at it from a different point of view, but what's the takeaway here? Fire active or retired firefighters own the property, so they're landlords, and they don't have working smoke detectors in the home. And the fire chief that stepped down, I mean, it doesn't clearly state whether he was one of the owners or whatever, friends and family were part of the owner. Why did he step down? He personally knew the other individuals, and they couldn't keep smoke detectors in the home? Who's truly liable here? And again, if this is a different John Weaver, who's the neighbor here, then there's no connections to Delphi. If it's the same John Weaver, even still, I don't know, people are drawing connections that might not be able to be drawn. I mean, we'll continue to examine that. Another response here by Janendu. Yeah, for all those that think law enforcement has it all figured out, they just need a final piece before gracing us with their secret detective skills. Remember, this is a law enforcement department that has probably the worst rate by population for unsolved girl murder cases in the country. Response by Human Oil here. Their response was the same. Doug Carter is either a good actor or a horrible policeman. I mean no offense by that, but the whole Captain America thing doesn't do anything for me. Being noble is one thing, but I'd prefer he solve the crimes. But the mantra is the same, can't release anything, blah, blah, blah. Even the mother has no clue what's going on. He hasn't even spoken to her. Like what? They need an overhaul. The Marvel division needs replaced or learn to solve a crime that isn't who threw down the gum I stepped in. I mean, come on. It's easy to forget that Carter isn't the Carroll County Sheriff, but the super of Indiana State Police. Insane that the top dog of a state's police department would talk the way he does. But regarding the local law enforcement, I guess the locals keep voting them back in. Another response here. Good old boys win a local elections whether they have ability or not. Another response here. 6 girls under the age of 14 murdered within 80 days of one another in the same county, and over 4 years later, nobody in custody. I've never heard of anything like that. Maybe the killers are rocket scientists and just too smart for law enforcement. Sad, because I don't see any justice anytime soon. That is interesting. If you take that statistic, 6 girls under the age of 14, and you compare all the counties, would we find, within 80 days of one another, would we find that everywhere that are unsolved? I mean, obviously crimes occur, hopefully, I mean, not to people that young, but unfortunately they do, hopefully not that many, but even when they do happen, how often are they solved versus unsolved with the same individuals in charge of these cases? Because, again, there might not be any conspiracy. This just might be a whole lot of ineptitude. It might, I mean, again, I'm not pretending to know what's going on. If there is a conspiracy, though, and all these people are resigning, that, I mean, it does look a little fishy. In how many cases do all these people just resign? It's crazy. The prosecutor, the fire department chief, it's really weird. Really weird. Now, there's not a lot of information on suspects, but apparently there was one neighbor with some dubious tattoos that apparently called these, or at least the oldest girl, names, and this is why the NAACP were involved, and then after the fires he moved out of state. I mean, if he was innocent, though, would he want to move out of state if people found out what he said and now they were dead? Everybody would hate him anyway, even if whether he was guilty or innocent. So I don't know. But there don't seem to be a whole lot of suspects that are publicly being discussed in the Flora Fires. Other discussion on the Flora Fire is supposedly there was quite a long wait to even respond to the fire. And some people are drawing parallels here with the same thing as calling off a search. There's a house on fire, they take their sweet time getting to it. And when the Delphi case, girls are missing, oh, let's just call off the search. Again, I'm not saying that's what happened here in either case. This is discussion on Reddit. Make of that what you will. Another response here. In my opinion, Flora is different than Delphi only because the families involved in Delphi want to talk, give interviews, raise awareness. In the Flora situation, it's obvious that family is declining to talk. I'm not sure if that's obvious or not. I understand their fear. I think in the Flora matter, family knows who it may be and are scared. Delphi is different. Another comment here by Jurison. When I read about all this, all I could think of was that poor mother. I just would be out of my mind. When I saw who the landlord was, my first thought was he knows laws, if anyone does, and this is rudimentary for crikey sakes. For the cost of $15 an alarm, it makes no sense to not have a fire alarm. But when I saw that the fire chief left, well, to me that speaks volumes. When you are in such a position, you don't leave the job, you leave management. In other words, someone was blocking or making his job impossible. Who could that be? I lost interest just personally because I just didn't see the reaction from the family and friends that I expected. It seems someone knows something and they aren't speaking, but maybe that's because they work in a place where ties to Mr. City Council are present. Whoever did this is truly wicked and they are still walking around free. That's scary. The fire alarms may not have saved them, especially if accelerant was used as they suspected. I wonder how that house passed any inspection prior to renting ever. Alarms are not new laws. I'm going to go over one more article regarding the Flora Fire, which is just really points to some corruption here. 1 year later, what we know about the fatal Flora Fire by Joseph Paul, Journal and Courier. Twists, turns, and tragedy have characterized the year since 4 sisters were killed in a suspicious house fire in Flora, a small Indiana town of less than 2,000 people. The November 21st blaze took the lives of Keone Precious Welch, Cariel Danielle McDonald's, Kayara Janelle Phillips, and Kayara Janelle Phillips and Kayana Latrice Davis, who ranged in ages from 5 to 11. Intense flames and black smoke prevented the girls from escaping and quelled rescue attempts by their mother, Galen Rose, and 2 police officers who first arrived at the home. They died of asphyxiation due to smoke inhalation in the early morning fire. Rose was admitted to a hospital with serious injuries and was released several days later. 1 year later, the fire, which has been ruled an arson, remains under investigation and the girls' deaths remain unsolved. The case has been the subject of rumors and controversy following the resignations of several key officials related to the fire and the ensuing investigation. It's also been the source of grief and anticipation as the girls' family, friends, and community await justice. Fire ruled incendiary. The fire was initially ruled undetermined due to the extensive amount of fire and smoke damage to the home. The Indiana Department of Homeland Security, the agency with jurisdiction over the Indiana State Fire Marshal, issued a news release January 28th calling the fire incendiary after accelerants were found in several locations of the structure, which was a single-family home divided into 2 apartments. A spokesperson for Indiana State Police, the lead agency on the case, said he could not expand on the type of accelerants or where they were used in the home. But this initial statement said several locations. Okay. Sergeant Kim Riley, Public Information Officer for ISP's Lafayette Post, said authorities still believe the fire was intentionally set, but the question of who is responsible still lingers. We've got 2 or 3 officers who are still working the case along with the county, but that's really all I can say about it, Riley said. We're still investigating it as a possible arson. Reward fund established. Less than 2 months after the girls' deaths, Carroll County was again rocked by 2 more unsolved killings. Teenagers Liberty German and Abigail Williams were reported missing February 13th and were found dead the next day after hiking on secluded trails east of Delphi. In the 9 months since their deaths, thousands of tips and more than $200,000 in donations have poured into law enforcement agencies as they search for a culprit. In January, Indiana Department of Homeland Security established a $5,000 reward fund for information leading to an arrest in the Flora case. Until March, however, the agency has not established a streamlined method to collect additional donations on top of the reward. The Homeland Security Agency began taking community donations after an inquiry by the Journal and Courier if they would be accepted. So they didn't even, that's kind of weird. Investigation shakeup. Detectives with ISP have taken the lead on the year-long case while officials with the State Fire Marshal and the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives have assisted with the investigation. In June, Dennis Randall, a state fire investigator assigned to the case, resigned after questions arose regarding the determination of arson. Indy Star reported in July. Following Randall's resignation, his son, Adam Randall, resigned as Flora Fire Chief during the department's monthly meeting in November. Carroll County Prosecutor Robert Ives also recently announced his decision to step down. The series of shakeups have led to some to question the quality of the investigation. So the state fire investigator, Dennis Randall, his son is the Flora Fire chief. Interesting. Very, very interesting. In October, Barbara Bowling Williams, president of the Indiana State NAACP convention, said the investigation had possibly been bungled. I'm not going to say the investigation has been botched or anything, Riley said. We're definitely working the case. Basically, like I said, the fire chief really has nothing to do with the investigation. His job is to fight the fire. That's what they did when they arrived, and that's his job as the fire chief. Wow, those are curious words. And if it was botched, would Riley come out and say, oh yeah, the investigation was botched? Like, what would you expect him to say? And again, that's something the coincidence theorists that deny all corruption, conspiracy, and incompetence, that's what they always fail to do, is to have controls to see what would happen in one situation versus another. Okay, so let's go to the police scanner audio.
When I left that group, I was on the way out, and I came up closer to the scene. Okay, we are loaded. We're getting a vehicle to take us all up there as a group. We're driving everybody up there. Yeah. I got some pickup that's going to take us up there versus bringing several vehicles. So we'll be up there in just a minute.
Wait for hit and run.
No hurry. Just had a citizen stop by our area. Information that girls have been found in the water. Can you confirm that? Negative. We have no confirmation whatsoever. He advised it was John Weaver that told him.
336, we just saw the subject go into apartment 71.
We have no confirmation of that whatsoever. 601. All of your connections are at the scene now.
So, what does this tell us? So, John Weaver. So, they reference him as a citizen. So, he's not an official fireman or first responder? So, they're referencing him as a citizen. So, it's the scanner is basically stating that a citizen, John Weaver, either told police or another citizen that the bodies were found in the water. So why is he saying this? And so he's part of the search party. Is this the same John Weaver that's the neighbor of the Flora Fire situation? And again, I'm not saying he is or he isn't. It's curious if it's the same guy. It's just, it's a little weird. So it says, so a citizen is stating to police or to someone in contact with police, this citizen is John Weaver, that the girls have been found in the water. Now, on the helicopter footage, it does look like the searchers are in the water. Is it so? Again, this is MINDSHOCK. We have to go through every single possibility. Is it possible they really were found in the water and then moved? Is it possible? I mean, we have so many different individuals who were allegedly there discovering the bodies at approximately the same time. I don't know if John Weaver is the first report shortly before they were officially found. I don't know if this is minutes or a half hour before they were officially found. And if they're right there, why would they be saying they're found in the water? Because if they are not in the water. It's curious. It's curious. It's hard to make heads or tails of this. And I don't know if the supposed fireman was ever identified that was telling people not to search that specific area. Some people are alleging that might have been John Weaver. Why would he be saying not to search that area? I don't know. These are curious questions. Again, we don't see this kind of strangeness in other cases. It seems everything is an issue. Again, there is a John Weaver who is a professor at Purdue, or works at Purdue University, and this is right from the this is from nanohub.org, website nano.purdue.edu. John Weaver serves as the facility manager for the Burke Nanotechnology Center at Purdue University. He is responsible for facility infrastructure, safety and training activities, and clean room and laboratory operations. John received his BS degree in chemistry at Adrian College in '72 and joined RCA Solid State Division in Process Engineering in the world's first production CMOS fabrication facility. In 1975, he moved to Hughes Aircraft Company's Solid State Products Division in Newport Beach, California, where he continued his role in high-volume manufacturing support engineering. In 1977, he moved to what is now Delphi Corporation in Kokomo, Indiana. During his year, John has been involved in a variety of roles in semiconductor process support, process development, and processing facilities development. John has published numerous papers in both the process development and contamination control fields, has 2 patents in process development, and authored a book and a book chapter in contamination control technology. He has taught a wide variety of industry short courses and is the recipient of the Willis J. Whitfield Award for contributions to the field of contamination control. He is a senior member of the Institute for Environmental Sciences and Technology, president of the Indiana chapter, member of the editorial board for the Journal of the IEST, and is a principal member of the NFPA 318 committee, which writes standards for clean rooms. He has been involved in the design, construction, and operation of more than 25 clean rooms and clean facilities during his career. Now, the conspiracy theorist would immediately jump to, is this a man who understands contamination and evidence and has many, many years of experience with such? Again, I'm not even saying this is the same John Weaver. I am not alleging anything about anyone. It's just curious that all these guys have the same name. And there's even a John Weaver as part of the Lincoln Project trying to take down Donald Trump. That was a different John Weaver. So again, I am not stating any of these John Weavers are the same people. Another curiosity is, of course, the Linda Weldy case. Some online researchers are alleging that a comment made on whatsnewlaporte.com was made by a certain John Weaver. Now, this claim is much more dubious, but I will go over the Linda Weldy case anyway. Before we get to this specific article, I want to do an overview of the entire case for context here. This was posted on Reddit Crime Community. Linda Weldy 10 was last seen in February 1987 by her bus driver after school release for the day. She was dropped off at the end of her driveway in LaPorte County, Indiana. Her body was found 3 weeks later, March 17th, along an abandoned railroad track 9 miles from her home. Linda Weldy's family thinks a serial killer is to blame for her murder, but police are skeptical. Linda was 10 years old when she was abducted from her bus stop in 1987. Her body was found 3 weeks later. Her killer is still out there. Linda's disappearance and murder. On the afternoon of February 24th, 1987, Linda's bus dropped her off near her home on McClung Road. It was approximately 3:30 p.m. According to police, her bus driver and other children saw her walk to the family mailbox as she did each day. The bus drove off. Linda was supposed to walk about 250 yards down the curved gravel driveway to her home, which was hidden by trees. A veteran of Foreign Wars building now sits where Linda's home used to stand. Linda never made it home. Police say Egolf's then-boyfriend, Robert, whom she later married, was at home at the time. Robert helped raise Linda and Egolf's son. According to newspaper reports, Robert and Egolf's 12-year-old son were in the front yard installing an antenna. Karen says she worked the late shift at her job, so she didn't realize Linda didn't make it home until she talked with Robert and he asked where Linda was. 22 days later, Linda's body was found by a farmer along some abandoned railroad tracks on County Road 500 South near Kingsbury. Linda had been strangled. Police asked Egolf to identify the body. And apparently this case reminds this poster of Sherry Mahan's case, Winfield Township, Pennsylvania. On a sunny February 22nd, 1985, 8-year-old Sherry Mahan got off her school bus on Corn Planter Road and headed to her driveway in her home approximately 50 feet from the base of the driveway in Pennsylvania, but she never made it. 3 other students got off with her at the stop, but all 3 made it home. A van sketch, as described by witnesses, possibly involved with Sherry Mahan's disappearance. And some researchers are stating here that Linda Weldy was not Linda Weldy Egolf. Her last name was Weldy. Her mother was Karen, last name at the time unknown. So they don't even know her mother's name here. Karen's boyfriend at the time was Robert Egolf. Karen later married out Robert Egolf and became Karen Egolf. 12-year-old was the son of Karen and unknown, at least half-brother to Linda, his first and last name unknown. Another poster said, "This reminds me of Jennifer Odom, got off the bus, never made it all the way up the drive to her home, found murdered a week later." I believe that was in February 2, 1993. So in this website, what's new, Laporte.com, cold case killing of Linda Weldy 10 still waiting to be solved. Can you help? February 24th, 2014. 27 years ago this week, 10-year-old Linda Weldy of LaPorte disappeared. She was reported missing February 24th, 1987. She was found dead March 17th of the same year. Like the 1993 cold case murder of LaPorte teen Raina Ryson that resulted in an arrest in 2013, authorities and others hope new evidence will surface in the Linda Weldy killing. Linda got off her LaPorte Community School Court bus at about 3:30, February 24th, 1987, near her home on McClung Road, but apparently did not get to her house. Her mother reported her missing that evening. Her body was discovered over 2 weeks later on an abandoned railroad right-of-way near County Road 500 South near Kingsbury. Police conducted interviews at the time, but no arrests were made. I'm still curious on, the mother's boyfriend and her 12-year-old son are in the yard when she's being taken or something happened. None of this makes any sense. And of course, there wasn't really a big internet true crime community back then, so this wasn't really being discussed extensively. The most extensive article I could find on this case is actually WSBT.com, Cold Case Files, the kidnapping and murder of 10-year-old Linda Weldy, posted Sunday, March 12, 2013. Linda Weldy's family thinks a serial killer is to blame for her murder, but police are skeptical. Linda was 10 years old when she was abducted from her bus stop in 1987. Her body was found 3 weeks later. Her killer is still out there. Tragedy. It's been 26 years since her daughter Linda Weldy was kidnapped and murdered, and Karen Egolf has felt every single minute of those 26 years. Some days are good and some days are bad, says Egolf, and they say with time it will heal all wounds. When something like this happens to your child, it doesn't heal. Sometimes you feel a little numb. But no, it never goes away. It never heals. Linda Weldy was a happy 10-year-old girl. She loved fishing and riding her bike. She was a riot. She was so funny. She loved this TV show called Mork and Mindy, says Egolf. Life was good, Egolf says, and the day Linda disappeared was like any other. We never thought that anything like this could possibly happen to us. We weren't rich, we didn't have very much money, and we always thought that people who got kidnapped for a ransom, and we were just so ignorant, says Egolf. Linda's disappearance and murder. On the afternoon of February 24th, 1987, Linda's bus dropped her off near her home on McClung Road. It was about 3:30 p.m. According to police, her bus driver and other children saw her walk toward the family mailbox as she did each day. The bus drove off. Linda was supposed to walk about 250 yards down the curved gravel driveway to her home, which was hidden by trees. A veteran of foreign wars building now sits where Linda's home used to stand. Linda never made it home. Police say Egolf's then-boyfriend Robert, whom she later married, was at home at the time. Robert helped raise Linda and Egolf's son. According to newspaper reports, Robert and Egolf's 12-year-old son were in the front yard installing an antenna. Karen says she worked the late shift at her job, so she didn't realize Linda didn't make it home until she talked with Robert and he asked where Linda was. Egolf says Linda often went over to a friend's house after school. When they realized Linda was unaccounted for, Egolf went to the police. This doesn't make sense to me. If Robert and Egolf's 12-year-old son are in the front yard installing an antenna, how did they not see or hear the bus? Let alone her. That doesn't make any sense. They assumed she went over to a friend's house. I didn't want to think my baby is gone and she's never coming home and I'll never see her again. I just keep clinging to that hope that she will come home and that we will find her and she will be back. I wouldn't give up. We still had that fragment of hope, says Egolf. That fragment shattered 22 days later. Linda's body was found by a farmer along some long abandoned railroad tracks, County Road 500 South near Kingsbury. Linda had been strangled. Police asked Egolf to identify the body. I still held on to that hope. No, it can't be her. It's got to be somebody else, says Egolf. But then I saw her. Who would do this to a child and live with themselves? I don't understand, people. I don't understand how anybody can hurt another person. According to newspaper reports at the time, police said they believed the person or people responsible for her murder probably knew Linda. But her family has a different theory. Egolf believes suspected serial killer Larry Hall murdered Linda. I actually went over Larry Hall on the Springfield 3 podcast series. If you haven't checked that out, you can check that out. Could a serial killer be to blame? Christopher Hawley Martin wrote a book about Larry Hall titled Urges. According to Martin, Hall is believed to have abducted and killed several girls throughout the 80s and 90s. Hall is serving a life sentence in Texas on federal kidnapping charges. He has never been convicted of murder. Martin says he has established a rapport for Hall and that they have a special way to communicate with each other so that Hall will not face any more charges that could lead to a death penalty. We've established a kind of code, says Martin. For example, I might ask Larry about a case and he will give me 2 or 3 facts about it. Then he will give me 1 false fact about it. What that does is contaminate it as far as law enforcement is concerned. Martin says Hall would use his van to abduct women and girls and then murder them. Martin believes Linda is one of his victims. And while LaPorte County investigators know of Larry Hall, they are skeptical that he committed this crime. Detective Sergeant Pat Cicero says he had a discussion with Martin. We noted several similarities with Hall's MO, said Cicero. I believe Mr. Hall could be a person of interest, but based upon the results of the ongoing investigation, we believe there were other persons who had more culpability. Let me repeat that again. We believe there were other persons, plural, who had more culpability. Cicero says suspects were developed in this case, but he wouldn't elaborate. That means there are still no answers for Linda's family. No answers. We still don't know, says Egolf. We still have our suspicions, and the police still have their suspicions. And it would be nice to be able to just close this. We would ask for anyone who has information to please come forward. The suspect or suspects knows who they are and what they did. It is time for them to help a grieving family, says Cicero. Egolf sits down every now and then to look at the pictures of Linda's life. The photos are reminders of how beautiful Linda was as a child, but there will be no wedding photos, no snapshots of graduation day, no grandchildren to add to her album. The photos of Linda Weldy will forever end at age 10. She didn't get a chance to do anything, but I am so very glad that I had her. even it was just for a short time, says Egolf. Do you know something? Please contact the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office Detective Bureau, 219-326-7700. So another very, very tragic case. And at some point, I've mentioned this in other cases, at which point should the police release all the information they have publicly? Because if they're not going to solve it, I mean, they're trying to protect the case for prosecution. That's all well and good. But after how many years and decades are they not going to solve it? Should there be another agency involved? What should happen instead of just leaving it in limbo forever? Because that's obviously not the way to get justice. There's way too many cold cases out there. I think everybody can agree on that. But here, going back to the many John Weavers, there's a comment here on the What's New Laporte.com write-up, which I read right before this more in-depth article. It's actually the first comment and the only original comment. There's two responses to it, but a John W. So this may or may not be a John Weaver. It could be a John White, it could be a John Wyatt, it could be a John Woo, it could be John whoever. He stated this on March 5th, 1979. I had the good fortune to be at the right place at the right time to pull a then 2-year-old Linda Weldy out of a burning house in LaPorte. I never quite understood why God would allow me to save her life that day, only to be taken 8 years later. I pray someone will step up and bring some closure to this case. A response by another John, July 27th, 2019, about 5 years later, it's not even about you, pal, stop seeking fame. And another response, January 2nd, 2020. That's amazing, and yes, puzzling as well. However, it was praiseworthy for you to be at the right place at the right time and be willing to endanger yourself to help another. Were you a passing citizen that just let caring emotion click in and moved on it, or were you in a line of duty that happened to dispatch you to the location where you thankfully were timely and, in my opinion, heroic? Bless you and any and all who would do the same. Happy New Year's. Okay. So, yeah, not a lot of activity, but who is this John W., and why are people attributing him to a possible John Weaver? Now, if it's the same John Weaver from the Flora Fire, that's curious, because this is a guy that's pulling people out of burning houses. That's a little bit curious. And LaPorte, Indiana, is about 90 miles north of Flora and Delphi. So not incredibly close, but still the same state, just for reference. So, yeah, what do we make of John Weaver? If these are all different individuals, and John W. is not necessarily John Weaver. Again, and if there's evidence that this John Weaver from Flora lived in LaPorte or worked in LaPorte in that area, it's all very, very curious, but without definitive answers, these could all be completely different John Weavers. And this is quite a tangled web that has been weaved. It's very, very mind-shocking. The only other Weaver here from North Central Ohio, WMFD.com, Task Force apprehends Indiana murder suspect in the Mansfield area. Mansfield, Ohio, a fugitive, this was Wednesday, July 8th, 2020, just last year. Mansfield, Ohio, a fugitive from justice took several officers on a chase through a wooded area on Tuesday. 24-year-old Martrell Weaver, who was wanted for murder out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, was suspected to be in the Mansfield area with family. Weaver is said to have shot a female victim 4 times at a residence in the Fort Wayne area. Following up on a lead, the Northern Ohio Violent Fugitive Task Force closed in on Weaver in a wooded area between the Woodside Estates Mobile Home Park and Caldwell Street. The task force officers arrested Weaver without further incidents and transported to the Richland County Jail, remaining there until he can be extradited back to Indiana to face his pending charges. Our task force and the U.S. Marshal Service across the country will stop at nothing to track down violent fugitives like this, said U.S. Marshal Pete Elliott. Both cities, Fort Wayne and Mansfield, are safer tonight with this man off the streets. And does this Martrell S. Weaver look like the younger sketch? I don't know. Some people are convinced that the bridge guy or the killer had an accomplice, and this might have been an older guy and a younger guy, possibly related. Possibly related, possibly not. But as always, there's more questions than answers, and hopefully this case does not become a cold case. But the parallels to the Flora Fire with a lot of these same officials involved, it is quite curious. I don't know at what point the FBI were supposedly already in Delphi investigating something else. Were they investigating corruption? Is this similar to the Stephen Avery case where FBI were already in the area on Cuss Road, apparently part of some other investigation at the time Teresa Hallback's going missing and then allegedly being killed? So is there something similar going on here where the FBI were already onto corruption in Indiana? Now, the coincidence theorists and the corruption deniers, they maintain that the FBI or some other agency would obviously discover corruption. Well, that doesn't happen overnight. If this is an ongoing investigation and it goes up even higher than surmised, even well beyond the individuals involved in the Flora Fire, it's very, very common in, of course, law enforcement to go after the biggest fish you can. Why would you take some petty drug dealer off the street if you're involved in an investigation that could take down the kingpin and much, much bigger drug traffickers? This is law enforcement 101. I'm not sure why all the coincidence theorists and corruption deniers are not familiar with these very, very basic processes in law enforcement, but that's the way it works. So hopefully this will all be solved very, very soon. And is this all one John Weaver? Are these all different John Weavers? How far up does the coincidence stack go? Now, if it's all the same John Weaver, and I'm not saying it is, but if it is, that's a little curious. I don't know, running the numbers statistically on whether it could all be coincidental, I suppose it still could. And again, John Weaver is a plausible enough name where these could all be different individuals. And of course, we're not going to fall for black and white fallacies. It's possible there are two John Weavers, and it would be curious if the Flora John Weaver is also the guy that saved this girl from a fire, and if he has some kind of relation to the other firemen, and the John Weaver in the Delphi case is not the professor at Purdue and not involved in any capacity. So there could be three John Weavers or two John Weavers with any combination of these situations. Again, I am not alleging any of them are any particular person or that they are the same person or that they are involved in any crime. This was all reported, and I just went through the articles, and these names keep coming up. And even if it was the same John Weaver, as I said, that doesn't mean he's guilty of any crime. I suppose it's all possible he could have been a good Samaritan who happened to live near the Flora Fire. So, yeah, a lot of people want to draw these definitive parallels that simply cannot be drawn, especially not with the limited information. And apparently, again, just from comments, I have no way to corroborate this, supposedly the Delphi police did speak to John Weaver, as I would assume if he was there finding the bodies, possibly in the water, possibly not if they were moved. Obviously, they would want to know exactly what was going on there. And I'm assuming they would have also investigated all of the searchers, but the alibi, of course, but it's weird because again, this is all rumored, that at least one or two of the searchers admitted to touching the bodies. Again, this is just a rumor. Why would they? Unless if they didn't know, if they were in the water and they didn't see them, then maybe they unintentionally touched the body. But if you happened upon a murder scene, would you just immediately rush to touch the body unless it wasn't obvious that they were dead? And that leads into a whole bunch of other rumors where apparently one of them was rumored to still be warm. And other rumors were that she died in the ambulance on the way away from the scene. But either way, I suppose if you believe they're alive and they're not obviously dead, you could check for a pulse or try to save them, so that would make sense. But if the scene is, as rumored, a very, very gruesome scene where it's obvious that they're dead and the police are nearby anyway, it's really weird. I mean, there's EMS, there's volunteer firefighters. If you're just a random civilian searcher, would you rush to contaminate immediately? I don't know. It's all very bizarre, very, very tragic. Hopefully awareness can be kept up in this case, and it won't go cold, and it will be solved soon. If you want to support MindShock and help us get more mind-shocking podcasts out there, keeping up awareness in various cold cases and missing persons cases, feel free to donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications, or you can just go to youtube.com/MindShock. Like and share this podcast on social media platforms, of which you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic logical analysis, co-podcast, or requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. So you could also help support the channel by becoming a patron. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.